Okay. Welcome back to the I Don't Like Murder podcast with Rita and Jenny. Hi, Rita.
Hey, Jenny.
How are you doing today?
Doing good. I don't like murder, but we're going to talk about it.
Yes. So today I'm going to tell you about the case of Kendrick Johnson, known as KJ. He went to Lowndes High School in Valdosta, Georgia, and his body was discovered on January 11th, 2013, rolled up in a gym mat. So we'll talk about the investigation, the impact on the family, and a possible FBI cover-up in this case. Also, a little bit of how race plays into potential investigations.
Got it. Yikes.
So the basic story of Kendrick is that he had went to school on January 10th. He didn't go to his last period class. His mom got concerned when he didn't come home after school and it was late. So she talked to her husband, who's a truck driver, and he was out on the road at the time. And he said, call the police. So she called the police and they pretty much told her, oh, he's a kid. He's fine. He's probably just, out with friends or with a girl or something. And she said, no, he's not. So first thing in the morning, she went to the school to find out what was going on, if he was at school, what was going on. And while she was still at the school, they found his body rolled up in a gym mat. And they wouldn't let her see him, but they did tell her that it was Kendrick. So she obviously, was not doing so well. They identified him. They let her daughter, his sister, identify his shoe, was how they identified him, which is a really strange way to identify a body. So the mat he was rolled up in, it's the same mats that pretty much all schools have, those like giant gym mats, was rolled up. And his body was like almost all the way in the 6-foot mat. So
almost like he was rolled up in it?
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Within it, not in between mats, right?
Not in between mats, in the center of the mat. The story is that his shoe, the kids used to like throw their shoes back in there for gym class, and then they would swap them out and they would throw them back into the mats. And the story is that the shoe fell down into the center of the mat. So he tried to crawl through the mat and get the shoe. First, he was 5'10", so close to 6 foot. But the story is that he decided that instead of just moving the mat from the bottom or tipping the mat over, he was going to dive into the mat and got caught in the mat and suffocated because of being upside down for so long. This to me doesn't make sense. So we'll go over the evidence that was found now in the gym. So there were 3 pairs of shoes in the gym. 2 of them were Kendrick's. One of the shoes he shared with another boy, which is why they kept them in the mats. The other one was his shoes that he wore to school that day. And then there was a separate pair of shoes that was not his. They still don't know whose those were. There was something on that 3rd pair of shoes that was like a reddish brownish color. They said it wasn't blood, but they did not keep that as evidence. There was also a hoodie in the gym that had a possible spot of blood on it that they didn't test and didn't keep as evidence either. Both of those were laying several feet from the mat where he was found. There was also 6 drops down the wall of blood that they did test those, and it wasn't his blood, but they didn't do any further testing to see whose blood it was. And it was a gym, so I'm sure people bleed in there all the time. But at the same time, if there's a murder or a potential murder, you should probably keep
Or
that as
just a
evidence.
death.
Yeah,
Right?
even a death, yes. But they pretty much, the authorities pretty much wrote it off as an accidental death immediately. The official autopsy that they had done at that time was that it was an accidental death, that he died of asphyxiation from being upside down. There are photos of him after his death. If you feel like you can stomach it, look at him, but they are really disturbing. He looks like he's been beat up. His arms are all like cut up. His hands were cut up. His face is all swollen and cut up pretty bad. He had a giant bruise on one side of his chest. The second autopsy, he's had 3 autopsies done. The second autopsy showed that there was blunt force trauma to his neck,
Oh, dear.
and which his family has been fighting since he died, knowing that he was murdered, that it wasn't an accidental death. They are certain of that. So after the second autopsy got them nowhere, they decided to go ahead a few years later and get a third autopsy done. And not only was there blunt force to the neck, there was also blunt force to one side of his chest, which was the bruising that was there. Also, when they dug his body up for the second autopsy, they had removed all of the organs, and they didn't usually, if they do an autopsy, they'll replace them and they'll place them in a bag and place them back into the body in case, especially in cases of suspicious death, if they need to do another autopsy. And he just had newspaper stuffed into the cavity of his body.
Oh, boy.
Which is not standard practice. So if you look at it as a cover up, then it looks very suspicious. You can also look at it as, I heard that they did the service for free for him. So it could have been like cost cutting measures. If you're looking at it objectively, that it could have just been, oh, it's easier just to shove some newspaper in there instead of.
If I could just say though, is that just if I were the medical person behind it, saying this has been the third autopsy on a suspicious death, maybe there's a fourth, maybe there's, you never know.
Right.
The newspaper thing is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
But yeah. Right. So it just goes to show, well, that's granting a tremendous amount of grace to someone to say it's because they did it for free.
Yes. Oh,
right.
Yeah.
Most
definitely.
Right. That diminishes the goodwill of that to go. That's just not
course.
Right. Anyway, go ahead.
Course.
I'm sorry.
So the same guy did the second and third autopsy.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the reasons they needed the organs is because on the first autopsy, his lungs were lighter than they should have been if he had died from asphyxiation, because there wasn't any fluid on it. So if they would have had his lungs, they would have been able to look at that and reinvestigate that part of it to see if that was a possibility or not. But according to the original autopsy, the weight of his lungs would not have let him have died by asphyxiation. So
right.
But it's really
right.
Very suspicious. I can't blame the family at all for thinking that this is suspicious. I think it's suspicious because it looks pretty obvious, and he does look really, really beat up in the photos.
So what's really unusual about this case, when you reminded me of it, I remember the case of unusual deaths, right? So high school, and then I remember the mats, because that was part of it. So when they had indoor PE in the gym, indoor gym, which was also sometimes a lunchroom, there would be mats all rolled up against the wall, because when they did gymnastics, or when the guys did wrestling, or whoever those mats were used for. I remember rolling them out, rolling them in. And so when I heard the case, I thought, these are big, heavy mats. How does someone get stuck in between one? Especially because when I thought of that, I thought of 3 or 4 different mats rolled up sometimes they
Oh,
would
yeah.
lift them to be on top. I'm thinking, even if there were 3 there or 2 there, these are heavy, and
Mhm.
then it didn't make sense, and then the story just seemed to disappear.
Yeah.
And so that's why I asked you in the beginning, did they find him rolled up in the mat? Like,
Yeah.
right? So he started he wasn't in between, he wasn't found in between them. He was literally within a mat.
Roll. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So why, right. So the question is, so why don't you just say that? Because obviously in the beginning, he was found within the mat, the rolled up mat,
Yeah.
not in between. So bizarre.
I think that was, in my personal opinion, I think that was media spin to help with the cover up.
Okay.
Because it was one of the boys who was accused of the murder by the family. His father is an FBI agent. So that played
Interesting twist.
Yeah. There's 2 brothers, the Bell brothers, and specifically Brian is the one that they suspect is the one that actually murdered Kendrick. They had been in fights before. And so both brothers say, no, we weren't there. We didn't see him. We didn't do it. But they knew to have a tense relationship.
Right.
So after Kendrick died, like immediately after, Brian was going different routes in the school to avoid his family and friends, so he didn't run into them. Both of the brothers immediately got an attorney, which is very suspicious. I would say that his father being in the FBI, if you want to be generous, that might be a route to go. But if there's an accidental death in your school, why would you need an attorney? That doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
And I will, just to benefit to the case and what I've seen is anymore, because so many very publicly viewed cases are being set, within the public square. People are saying this and that, and everything's suspicious. Even if you were completely innocent, if you had the money, I would lawyer up. I don't know why. It's like, I don't know why my name's being brought up. I'm going to lawyer up because everything we've watched is every time you go into the police, it's like, okay, they're interrogating me, but I'm not under arrest. But all of a sudden, then you're confessing to something, right? Because so I could see, especially if his dad was in law enforcement, going, yeah, no matter what's going to happen, you need to have somebody say he ain't talking. But I mean,
that's one of the things where I can go either way on that. One of the most interesting things to me, and it's debated, is the cameras. So the cameras timeframes don't match. Apparently the school's excuse is that it's an old system and they just don't match. So they've had people comb through and do all this investigation back and forth, and it depends on what source you look at, what it shows, which is strange in itself. But the last thing that I saw, and it was on the family has a documentary they just put out, and it was on there, and they show that the gym, who is where he was murdered or
found,
the cameras turn off. There's 4 cameras in there, so it's all a little bit different time, but somewhere around 11 and don't turn on, or somewhere around noon, and they don't turn on until somewhere a little after 1, all of them. It varies a little bit for each camera, but there's about an hour where there's cameras have nothing to show. And there's
on the day that he was disappeared.
Yes. And they are, the cameras are motion sensitive. And according to every source I've seen, there were a group of boys playing basketball in the gym at the time he went missing. So the last footage of him walking into the gym was right around noon. And there was a group of boys playing basketball in there. You see him walk through the gym when there's people in there. And then that was the last footage of him.
And then when it restarts up, are there people in the gym? Or
They didn't say what
Okay,
what
so
was
it's just
going on
saying that
at that point.
unusually all the cameras just stopped working.
Yeah.
And
And
so are they inferring that there was no motion, that's why they weren't working, or they just actually shut off?
that they're inferring that there was no motion, which if there's somebody playing basketball, that doesn't make any sense.
Got it.
But
got it.
and there were kids the whole time, the day his body was found and the day he went missing. School was running the same, even after they found his body. The kids were going from to and from the class, coming to the gym. Like they did not seal off the crime scene. There was one of the shoes was found under his body, and there was a pool of blood that had come down. The shoe had been laid on top of the blood. There was no blood on the shoe. So that was also one of the suspicious pieces of the investigation.
Right.
So the pool of blood under the shoe was another one of the mysterious circumstances in this case. One in the documentary that the family put out, one of the things that was the most disturbing to me, and the one that kind of gives you chills and thinks, oh my God, this Brian kid is definitely lying. It definitely was a cover up from the FBI. The FBI, when they first got the footage, went through all the footage. Brian had said he had not seen Kendrick the day that he died.
Mm-hmm.
There is a frame on camera, and the FBI had made a chart and wrote out that they were together in that frame, but of the boys walking, not side by side, but they were right next to each other, probably 6 foot away from each other,
Mm-hmm.
walking next to each other in the same direction. So you saw him that day. You were completely lying, but it was in the FBI footage. And then that got completely redacted to anybody else who saw the footage. It was never shown anywhere else. But that just can give you chills that they're walking right there together, not long before he went missing.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was one of those, well, if you thought that it might not have been a cover up before, that one tiny little frame where they were right next to each other, that was, I'm going to say, covered up. This is all my opinion, but
right. And the hard thing too with the way our system works is it's circumstantial, right?
Yeah.
So is that, and then because I'm going to play devil advocate, because he could go, I saw him every single day. I don't remember seeing him on that day. It could have been Monday. I mean, because right. And then, but what's amazing that the family has to go to the point of creating a documentary saying something's not right here, but right, who gets to assist them? Who assists them, right? To say it's right. So what you were told isn't what was happened. And it's that is the other scary part of it. It's up to the family, when the people that we think we go to say, hey, police department, hey, detectives, something's up here.
Yes.
And then it's like, no, can't prove it. Don't know. He said no. So interesting. Sorry for the interruption.
Yeah. No, you're fine. The family has protested. They have fought. Parents have been arrested protesting at the police department. They have went for the whole, I think it's been about 8 years. They have fought and fought and fought for this case to be solved because they know something was wrong. So kind of, well, I don't even want to evidence towards a conspiracy here. There's been several people that knew information about the case that had went to the authorities, and all of them have immediately changed their mind about testifying or turning in that information. There were 7 judges that recused themselves of this case. 7 judges. That's a lot. A U.S. attorney, when he took over 2 years after Kendrick died, Michael Moore, he looked into the case. He wanted to you know, he was like, I'm going to solve this. I'm going to solve this. All of a sudden he resigned his position and moved to be an attorney somewhere else. And then in 2018, they had reopened an investigation. They went through it, and the family was told that, yes, it was suspicious. He was murdered. The shoe was planted, but there's not enough evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. So basically, it's like, yeah, you're not going to get justice, but that's just how it is. I do think that this, I do think that race played a part in this, because Kendrick was a Black man and Brian's white. His dad's an FBI agent. And I think that a lot of that, and it's a southern Georgia state, which racism is, you know, I feel like in Georgia, racism is heavier than a lot of other parts of the country.
Well, and what, because I don't know the people or the accused and what's in their head. I'm more frightened of the fact that what we perceive as regular citizens as the people who protect us, right? But if your family member works for the protectors, the police, the FBI, the legal system, the state system that goes, is that, oh, well, and then just because it wouldn't be unusual, as we know, in the justice system for everybody to know everybody. So, but it does, because my thing is, my first thought isn't race, it's who you know. And if your dad, and so, because it could be two young men having a beef with each other and not backing down. And then it just got to the point where we beat him to death. Yeah. And now we have to, you know, we whatever it, how, I don't know, because we don't know, we'll never know until somebody confesses, which doesn't sound like it is, but it more, to me, it more sounds like somebody who has, for whatever happened, we'll never know because Kendrick isn't with us anymore. And no one's talking, and the people who are, you know, if the DA says there is somebody responsible, we just don't have enough evidence, that person gets to tell the story. And his story is, I didn't do it. And so those, that's why it's so interesting to look at these cases in different places, because I think there are some cases where, you know, the animus may not have been the color of his skin. It may have been the hubris of the young man to think I can get away with murder, which kind of did. And then, you know, as a regular citizen going, if your dad's the FBI guy, everybody knows. I mean, it's so scary. That's
how
the scary part.
How many dads have gotten their kids out of things because of their position, regardless of whether it's murder or usually much less offensive things. But
in my opinion, the race thing can come to play when the parents are seeking justice.
Yeah, it did.
Right? That's what I mean, is that to go, why? Right. Because it would just be, like I said, regular citizen USA. There's another case that I was watching, the same kind of thing, where the parents said the young mid-20 guy living life, doing great, just all up and commit suicide. And his parents said to their grave, there's no way in the world. And they just had to, but the DA, everybody said, no, da, da, da. And there was so much where, like, the people who are against the family saying, we just want to look deeper into this case, that the DA's office exposed all this kid's text messages with the family members. You know, like you and I tease each other through text messages and go like, don't ever show anybody this, you know, just being snarky or something. It would be like someone taking everything you've ever said on Twitter to some, or not Twitter, text to somebody, and exposing it. And so it's just all these, and then because this, the thing that I watch is just how much, whether it's the police, the DA, just the judicial system was against this family by saying, we ruled in a way, stop, you know, stop upsetting the cart. We said suicide and it's suicide. and we're not backing down.
Yeah.
And to the degree that, so it's really about how the family went in and said, we need to get a new DA, and they became political and they walked door to door. And so it's just to watch this, to say, so if you've got somebody, it's, I don't want to be political, but it is that, you know, are we all really equally protected? Is the law really blind? That's what's supposed to be, right? And so that's what these cases
Yeah.
are interesting to go, yeah, not if you don't know somebody.
Yeah.
Right. Or
Yeah,
if you know, that your chances are higher of getting away with it if you know somebody in the system.
absolutely.
Wow. Right.
Yeah.
And that, yeah, just it's very telling. And that's kind of where the race thing is, that no matter when an injustice is done, and that's why we're doing this show, is because some things just don't make sense. Because like I said, you hear about the case and go, how the heck do you get stuck behind those mats? Those mats are really super heavy. And that's, you know, just the whole thing of these rolled up, kind of like remember those roll-ups? It's like a,
yes, the fruit roll
not
up.
ding dong. No, yeah, like a fruit roll-up, or
Yeah.
that Hostess ding dong, or
Oh,
I forgot what
yeah.
those. Remember those things? And then you could
Yeah.
see the swirl.
Uh-huh.
That's what makes me think of going inside versus in between.
Yeah, it's a big difference.
Yeah, just a big difference, meaning somebody actively had to roll a human being up in it.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so, but the last where it got a big media attention, where a case in Georgia would come to, you know, my world, is he fell in that, I remember in the back of my mind going, how does that happen? And then I move on with my life. But then the interesting part is, but the family of Kendrick, I'm sure same thing. And then that desperation to go, well, someone will figure it out. And I think that's the part. And when we talk about families and extended families of crime victims, is who do they go to?
Yeah. I mean, they are fighting.
Right.
They're very much fighting, which is amazing, because not many people keep fighting almost a decade later.
Right. And that's where it stands right now, is accidental death. And the DA, they pretty much say there's not enough evidence.
Yeah. They did reopen the case earlier this year to reinvestigate it from the start, like completely reinvestigate the case. So hopefully something comes out of that.
Ooh.
But also I feel like it's probably going to be another one of those, somebody resigns because of pressures above them. You got to be really strong. I mean, if the FBI comes after you and says, no, you're not doing this, you know,
but it is a testament to a parent's tenacity for their child.
Yeah, it is.
So it's like 10 years is a long time. And like I said about that other case, where the parents were like, we'll just go door to door with everybody in our county to get a new DA in. And the saddest part is, like, you'd want that person, because the person who was primarying the DA, who said, I'm going to help crime in our town, but the story was about the town being split between those people who kind of and that's what's so interesting about our system, our judicial system, is when things go wrong, who do we go to? Or when, you know, like we will talk about in the future, of all of the plea deals, all of the cases where someone just took the path of least resistance, you know, people who say they're guilty just because they just want it to end. And, you know, and then the after effects of that, it's just is that where do people go? And when you have those cases that say there's nothing we can do, or we'll have a case coming up soon about, like you said, we know we just don't have enough to convince a jury. So that's terrifying to me. Go, right. It is. And terrifying just kind of as a citizen, but then, but for the families who are sitting there going, we all know, and that person is just walking among us, which is, right.
And everyone knows. I mean, the investigators know, whoever may or may not have covered it up knows.
And now people watching this will know, right?
Yes.
Right. So interesting. Where this case is pending a reinvestigation, and then you'll just follow up when we get more info. That's where we're going. Awesome. That's a really interesting case. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you.
Welcome. Thanks, Rita.
Yay. Looking forward to the next show. All right, join us. We will be
Yes.
letting you know when our next episode is, but thanks for joining us, and please comment and tell us if there's cases out there that you'd like us to talk about. Thank you. Bye-bye.